Welcome to the Connecticut State Department of Education's webinar presented by the Talent Office in partnership with Tepper and Flynn. I am Dr. Shwana Tucker, Chief Talent Officer, and I am joined by Christopher Todd, Bureau Chief, and Education Consultants Sharon Fuller and Kimberly Audette of the Talent Office. On August 11th, the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Miguel A. Cardona, pursuant to Executive Order 7C, issued one-time flexibilities with the Guidelines for Educator Evaluation 2017 and Connecticut General Statutes Section 10-151B. While 2020 and the ongoing pandemic has brought changes for all, it remains our goal in the Talent Office to provide you with resources to adapt to varied teaching and learning models while adhering to health requirements.
These resources were developed by multiple Connecticut State Department of Education bureaus and prioritize areas such as families as partners in facilitating learning, quality and standards-based curriculum resources, mastery-based learning focused on individual student needs, equity, especially for the most vulnerable students and families, and consistency and simplicity in cross-curricular planning, common platforms, instructional plans, and communication with families.
This webinar provides an overview of Part 3, one of the resources that Tepper and Flynn have developed for the CSDE Talent Office. These resources were developed to support districts with the implementation of the flexibilities and to reflect the critical importance of the social and emotional learning, well-being of students and educators, and family engagement during the 2021 academic year. The series of resources from Tepper and Flynn include observation and feedback and support for educators, observation, feedback, and support for administrators, and developing and implementing student learning objectives with a focus on social and emotional learning. Through all three parts of the guidance documents, the CSDE seeks to support districts, schools, and PDEC committees with recommendations, resources, and strategies for performance management that maintain continuity and coherence when applicable, leading to equitable learning opportunities for each of our students, regardless of teaching and learning models.
In addition to the three documents developed by Tepper and Flynn, there are also two webinars. The first focused on observation of practice and performance, and the second webinar about developing SLOs focused on SEL. And now I would like to introduce Patrick Flynn and Amy Tepper. They have worked with the Connecticut State Department of Education in providing training for evaluators in the observation of educator practice and in providing quality feedback. They have worked with multiple school districts in Connecticut and are familiar with the Connecticut Guidelines for Educator Evaluation, as well as the rubrics used to observe educators in practice and performance.
Well, thank you to the CSD Talent Office for involving us in this work to support implementation of the flexibilities. We're always grateful when we have the opportunity to support Connecticut schools and Connecticut districts. The work that Amy and I do with schools, of course, varies school to school and district by district, but it's often focused on providing support to those who supervise and coach teachers in development of their own performance and practice. This includes teachers themselves who are given the opportunity to provide peer-to-peer feedback both in and outside of the evaluation system. Those who work with us in this capacity learn or solidify their own understanding in the core idea that everything we do is about student learning. That learning may be academic, it may focus on a student's social emotional development, their civic or cultural understandings, but in the end, our work is about nurturing students' levels of knowledge, skill, and dispositions towards a better school year and a brighter future for every student. This year is different for certain, and we need to consider carefully what we will focus on in support of our students, meeting them where they are, addressing their social and emotional needs to ensure that they will be successful, and invite and engage families as partners in supporting that success, the pathway to achieving these goals.
With this in mind, you will find a consistent message across the guidance resources in support of teachers, service providers, leaders, and learners. Goal setting and implementation and ongoing review are critical steps toward ensuring students move forward each year. However, we need to ensure all educators and leaders feel supported in this year's evaluation process. No steps or actions we take should increase stress or add to already existing overwhelm. The consistent message you will see in the documents and from our first webinar is that we need to first build on what is already in place, build from what we already know and the skills and the practice that remain important and effective regardless of the teaching and learning model, and goal setting, professional learning, and feedback. We then need to clarify what needs to be adapted. And then we focus on equitable, accessible learning and the well-being for all. In each part of the guidance documents, you will see sections to help you identify what can be maintained, what can be adapted, and how to make connections for staff. What is important to note is that much of the process associated with articulating and implementing SLOs remains the same. Standard practices such as engaging in goal-setting meetings, designing based on current data, and understanding of student performance all remain part of our practice. Take a few seconds to consider absolutes we provide in the goal-setting guidance that have been constant throughout the years described in the Connecticut Guidelines for Educator Evaluation in 2017 to help you consider how to support teachers, service providers, and leaders in goal setting. As you consider how your teaching or leading practices contribute to attaining your goals, educators and administrators should strive to develop and implement goals that meet the specific needs of staff, learners, and families in their schools and districts, and align with school and district goals, represent year-long and developmentally appropriate growth for all, are mutually agreed upon, and provide opportunities throughout the year to make adjustments. In the first section of each of the documents, part 1, 2, and 3, and in our first webinar, you will see sections broken into purpose, expectation, and evidence collection or process. So we have broken this webinar down in the same way. Our driving purpose is always about the learning, as Patrick mentioned, and our commitment to ensure we advance equity. With this purpose in mind, those facilitating goal setting engage in strategies and practices that align with and directly lead to this outcome. The learner framework found in the CSDE's Plan for Continuous Learning provides a reminder that all of our work, observation and feedback described in part 1 and 2 in our first webinar, and our goal setting should put the learners at the center. We are always designing learning experiences that move us toward advancing equity. Goal setting this year and every year should lead with the learner, not the teaching we want to achieve. We shared our overarching purpose for evaluation and supervision in the first webinar, but wanted to remind you of how these connect to our roles as facilitators of goal setting. Picture 1 reminds us that the bottom line is through supervision, evaluation, and support, we must become the lifeline for our students, families, teachers, service providers, and leaders to ensure their well-being. We must seek to diminish stress and overloading staff with one more thing. However, it is important to continue to emphasize that goal setting is not an event and can become the vehicle through which we engage in rich conversation about teaching and learning and support overall well-being. Picture 2 reminds us through consistent support throughout the year, especially through feedback, we can increase levels of self-efficacy, and by building on current strengths and previous learning, we can set staff up for success, increasing their belief in their ability to take action and affect change. Picture 3 reminds us our goal should always be to promote growth for all learners, adults and students, even in these times. The flexibilities have waived summative ratings. Staff can feel safe taking risks, embarking on initial goals focused on improvement and growth for all, revisiting goals and strategies throughout the year to make adjustments.
As Amy has mentioned, most of the expectations for goal setting and implementation remain constant. It is important for those facilitating goal setting to ensure goals continue to be data-driven. Through this webinar and in the guidance documents, we describe what potential types of data are and what data can be used to support this year's SLOs and SLIs given the flexibilities. They must be connected to the overall needs of students, possibly linking more than ever before a student's social emotional learning, student engagement, and family engagement. They need to be collaborative, seeking as often as possible approaches to grade level, department-based, and whole school support for identified student needs. They can be standards-based, either representing learning defined in prioritized curriculum standards, or, if SEL aligned, to frameworks like the kindergarten through grade 3 social-emotional and intellectual habits, all built from the foundational skills in the cognitive and social-emotional development domains of the Connecticut Early Learning and Development Standards. They need to be developmentally appropriate to ensure we recognize authentic and realistic measures for year-long growth for students, especially in varied models. They need to be mutually agreed upon so that teachers and administrators are collectively recognizing the priority needs for all learners. They can be aligned to the overall needs or trends of a school and the district, continuing to pursue essential through lines for student and adult learning. And they need to be aligned to performance in practice, or your district's framework, that we know can lead to student learning. Finally, as educators and leaders begin to design SLOs, careful consideration should be given to collection, organization, and analysis of information about the needs of all stakeholders. The models for teaching and learning and conditions and circumstances within an individual district or school vary greatly and will play a critical role in how the flexibilities are applied, especially in the development of SLOs. Therefore, this guidance document and the examples provided, they serve to provide a potential pathway for schools that could be adapted based on district or school needs. As we described in the first webinar, this year, one of the more important actions we can take is to continue to cultivate a common understanding of the connections between existing expectations of teaching and learning and those practices that support the outcomes we are seeking for our students. For example, student emotional competency, student self-regulation, student engagement, environments for learning, and so on. The CCT for Effective Teaching and Service Delivery and the Connecticut Leader Evaluation Support Rubric provide explicit connections, such as in Domain 1 of the CCT supporting respectful and equitable environments, or in Domain 3 supporting such outcomes as student ownership through self-regulation, or in the CCL in Domain 4 in support of school culture and climate. So how do we support our teachers and leaders in design of these types of student learning goals? What is important to note is that the flexibilities allow for, well, just that, flexibility. Note the word may and the words measure of accomplishment. These two phrases highlight the important understanding that teachers, service providers, and leaders in conjunction with their supervisors should consider, but are not required to design SLOs aligned to various categories of learning suggested. Additionally, measures of accomplishment can be interpreted as allowing for greater levels of flexibility in the types of data used to support not only goal setting, but equally important, the monitoring and adapting of those goals through formative measures.
We mentioned in the absolutes that goals should be mutually agreed upon. This requires a process of goal setting that is truly collaborative. That includes setting common goals for teams, grade levels, and/or whole schools, the development of common assessments, maximizing the use of the expertise in our buildings and in our districts, and embedding SEL throughout a school community. The flexibilities offer options for the development of goals this year for teachers and service providers. The flexibilities are not mandating SEL goals. The intent was to expand the options for developing goals focused on SEL and allow opportunities for districts and schools to focus on practices that will support well-being and the development of social-emotional learning. Districts who have adopted the flexibility measures for the 2021 academic year have permission to focus student learning components on social and emotional learning, student engagement, and family engagement exclusively. Therefore, consider the list of options we have presented and consider each staff member you support and if or how one would represent the best pathway for each individual or team. Why would we encourage teachers or service providers to write goals that are well beyond their expertise? To help you think more about pathways and to ensure we do not overwhelm teachers and build efficacy, we created if-then considerations to help evaluators support teachers in the development of appropriate goals. As mentioned earlier, The models for teaching and learning and conditions and circumstances within an individual district or school vary greatly and will play a critical role in how the flexibilities are applied, especially in the development of SLOs. These if-thens can be used in mutual discussion by PDECs, school leadership, teachers to help in determining how to write the goals that best fit current realities based on existing data available to the school. In our work, we have always promoted a first step of building a common understanding of expectations, strategies, and priorities, starting with a definition. We cannot ask staff to work toward an outcome if it is not clear what that outcome is. It is critical to build a common definition of social and emotional learning. Though the CSTE offers a definition and CASEL provides an excellent direction with concepts we share in Part 1, we promote that each district work to build their common understanding. In Part 3, we offer suggestions for this work to include utilizing the definitions found in the CCT for effective teaching and service delivery. Second, schools and districts can build a common understanding of how to integrate SEL into every day, every lesson, every unit, to ensure it is not just seen as a standalone entity or silo, or just something to be executed or implemented in the first 15 minutes of each lesson. And third, schools and districts can build a common understanding of how to make connections between SEL and known or existing practices in previous professional learning, and use the opportunity to build a more refined definition of engagement. This example from the CCT for Effective Teaching offers existing definitions to help schools and districts in this work. In Part 1 of the resource documents, we shared guidance on this work, but if schools and teachers opt for goals centered on engagement, this step is critical. What do we mean really by engagement? In Part 1, we suggested that you help staff see connections between social, emotional, and academic learning. And in Part 3, we provide an example of alignment to a Connecticut Common Core and SEL. Consider this example from the guidance documents and this critical competency for all learners that is included in science, engineering, math, ELA, and social studies. And notice social and emotional learning is naturally embedded. Connecticut has developed, as Patrick mentioned, the kindergarten through grade 3 social, emotional, and intellectual habits framework, which represents the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that form an essential blueprint for college and career readiness to achieve academic success and social and emotional learning. The kindergarten through grade 3 habits build from the foundational skills in the cognitive and social and emotional development domains of the early learning and development standards, highlighting the continued growth and development that must be supported over early elementary years. The framework does not require districts to develop new curricula or programs to support social and emotional learning. Many of the social knowledge, skills, and dispositions can be addressed throughout the course of the regular school day, during daily routines, and during academic instruction. To that end, the habits documents developed by the academic office consultants and Connecticut educators are meant to serve as resources to teachers, administrators, and curriculum developers for integrating social emotional learning into current curriculum documents. Pre-K and 4th grade teachers could consult these as well as support resources and adapt to their needs.
Amy has outlined how to support evaluators in establishing supportive and well-connected goals with teachers. Let's shift our attention to supporting leaders in goal setting. Based on the flexibilities, administrators can focus on reopening of schools, supporting the health and safety and social-emotional well-being of staff and students, supporting remote and distance teaching and learning, mastery-based learning, and/or ensuring equity for their students and their families. Any school that has agreed to the flexibilities should continue to support the through line on both ends, with what teachers are working to develop and support through their goals, and what the district-wide needs and resources are supporting. It is important leaders make connections, just as described by Amy about teachers. Recognizing actions and needs related to school climate are in direct correlation with SEL competencies, intersecting in the conditions for the development of social and emotional learning. These areas of focus can be part of existing action plans and strategies to meet essential outcomes due to the COVID-19 pandemic that ensure equitable access to teaching and learning, basic needs are being met to ensure increased levels of engagement, student and staff well-being is assured throughout the year, and that students are supported to achieve academic success at the highest possible levels. Family partnerships are critical to teaching and learning and overall student success, especially this year, and leaders who determine this to be the focus of their SLIs will find the CSDE resources, such as the full, equal, and equitable partnerships with families, to be invaluable in considering not only the goals they set, but the actions they can take to close the gap for their school or district. Consider for a moment the importance of some of the CSDE recommended strategies or focus areas outlined in this document that can be integrated into leaders' SLIs and really can be integrated into teacher, service provider, or leader SLOs SLIs. These support increase and an impactful family engagement within schools.
Whether we're talking about educator or leader goals, this year in talking with districts, assessment has become an area of uncertainty and confusion, and it doesn't have to be. In Part 3, we provide guidance in relation to assessments in two key aspects. First, the use of assessments, considerations for both validity. For example, teachers and service providers may consider a strengths-based approach regarding what strengths teachers have in assessing their students and then identifying potential sources of bias and how to avoid them. And reliability. For example, SEL skills and competencies include internal or metacognitive processes or habits and or mindsets which can require self-evaluations or self-reporting. We also have to consider if students are completing assessments at home, the surroundings and environment, the stress level of the students at the time, if it was completed independent of an adult in the home, or if the adult has the ability to facilitate if needed. The use of assessment in the SLO process allows educators to identify starting points, recognize patterns of success, adjust practices, and support student growth. However, accurately measuring SEL competencies comes with challenges. It is important to note here that given the waiver of summative ratings this year, SLOs are or have become for now what they should have always been, articulated visions of our expected outcomes that allow us to routinely check in and share how we are doing in meeting our students' needs and how we can shift our practice to have the greatest possible impact. The viewing of assessments of SEL competencies as formative becomes an increasingly important message. We are well aware, and we need to ensure that teachers and leaders are well aware, that tying formal assessments such as the DESA or SEERS to measured evaluation is not the intent. Instead, we want to use these formal measurements as a guide to our understanding of student need and support in forming the strategies that we can deliver.
For districts looking for guidance on how to incorporate an academic indicator within an SEL goal, refer to the two samples on the website. These samples provide one approach to setting a goal and are intended just as that, as examples. We provide samples for educators of a 5th grade SEL goal, a 7th grade ELA goal with habits of mind strategies, and one sample for leaders, a family engagement goal. It's important to keep in mind that no part of educator and leader support and evaluation exists in isolation or without alignment to identified goals. We know that we must have an effective professional learning and quality inquiry teams or PLCs so that feedback is feeding forward, ensuring that professional learning is responsive and actionable and that inquiry teams are exploring the right questions. Because the flexibilities encourage a focus on social-emotional learning and well-being, professional learning related to the development and implementation of student learning objectives should continue to strengthen adult development, understanding, skills, and dispositions in these areas. Part 1 and 2 of the guidance documents provide comprehensive suggestions for the development of responsive professional learning regardless of your model of teaching and learning. Remember, the guidance provided supports the capacity as supervisors and evaluators to build on the strengths of existing practice, support adaptations and adjustments necessary to ensure continued learning regardless of the model, and a focus on equity, accessibility, and the well-being of all within our educational community. As guidance documents and resources are released, these documents are intended to support, not reset, the goal setting process already underway in districts. Thank you, and please don't hesitate to contact us at any time for additional support.